Hey everybody on here, and coming to you with this month's Connecting Codes video. Is anybody else feeling like their head's a little bit full from everything that's been happening? I mean, it's really been quite the ride lately, to say the least, and it just feels like every day there's one more big boom coming out in the world of who's connected to who and what's going on and who's doing what and all of that great stuff. I do want to mention to everybody that I'm very happy and very excited to say that the next edition of Code Journey, so the version for 2021, is about to be released this week. The ebook versions are already available, but my wholesale versions and the paperback versions, they should be coming available almost any day. So watch my pages for that, and I'll be sharing around that. I'll also be posting on my website for that as well. So those are just a couple of things to keep in mind. And so by the time I do the next video, hopefully I will have a copy in hand. I can show you what it looks like. But again, all the links will be on my website. That's the easiest place to go through because it gets you right to the page, the product page. So it's really valuable and really beneficial to take that route. And again, each week I'm refining these a little bit, so bear with me. I'm trying to find the right flow. I'm trying to bring in more of how the codes are connecting, while still giving some insights about what is happening and breaking things down a little bit and understanding, because a lot of people have mentioned that. They said, you know, even though your videos are longer, we really appreciate that you're actually taking the time to explain some of these different components and pieces that we hear about or that we see. So I kind of want to keep doing that, and a couple of areas I think I'm just going to kind of let go of because I'm finding that they're not maybe as important to address, and hopefully that will help me keep the time down a little bit on some of these videos. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's take a look and see where things are at right now. And the big topic, and I've talked about media, I know, in the past, and I know that is one of the key things, but it is such a central point to so much of what is happening in the world and how things are perceived, and the disbursement of the information, and where the hot topics are, where the hot points are in things. And when I talk about that today, I'm actually going to get a little bit more into the elitist concepts and breaking some of that down. And so I think that hopefully we'll put some more pieces together for people in this. So as many of you are well aware, censorship is riding high right now, right? Probably have seen a lot of your favorite accounts get canceled, get blocked, get hijacked, get, you know, just shut off completely. You've probably heard some of the bigger anons with large followings saying, you know, they've been completely booted off, they've lost their content. And, you know, if this is happening, you can always, by the way, go to their sites. I want to support them in that. Go to their sites directly, do a search for them, search other areas, other platforms, because there are platforms out there that are not doing the censoring. They're not doing the bias. What's challenging for them right now is platforms they thought they could trust are getting bought out. So these bigger companies connected to Facebook and YouTube and various things are going in, and they're putting the pressure on these other companies to also do the censoring in there. Fortunately, there are companies or, you know, platforms out there that are not supporting that and not going to go in that direction, but it can take some research. So if at any time my stuff goes down, just do a search. CompassionCodes.com is my website. Search around some of the other media options and you'll probably find me, because I'll just reopen it in an area that is there. I don't have that big following, so I'm at this point not the same kind of target as the others, and I am more about education in a lot of ways than and making the connections with the work that I do and my truth and understanding of of what the truth really is in this world through the codes. So it's a little bit different than what some of the full-on anons are doing out there. So this has been a big hot topic because it goes so far beyond just censorship. It's not, you know, they really want you to believe that this is all about protecting you from lies. And this is, as we know from what I've talked about before, part of how they work. Look, I'm doing this for your best interest. And it's not for your best interest. What they're doing is it's about control. And it's about keeping you from hearing or seeing or being exposed to anything other than what they want you to know. And this is a very important thing to keep in mind. So it's no surprise that we're seeing all of the censorship come up when you have things like Hunter Biden's events coming out, and you have, you know, these connections coming out and the scandals coming out. Of course they're going to try to censor that because they don't want you to know the truth. When too many people are looking at those things, when too many people are getting that information, they get scared. So it's no surprise, because when the truth can't be silenced with bashing and the bullying and the abusive behavior, which is what they were doing on post and sending trolls through and paying people to go in and bash the anons for quite a while on their post and things like that, then they move, you know, when they can't control the anon behavior that way and it keeps growing and more people keep finding out, then the only option left becomes for them to censor. This is self-defense. This is an aspect of self-protection that is going on for them. So when it comes down to it, what their goal then becomes is, let's censor and let's erase the information. And we know that this erasing of information is something that was done in Hitler's time. So, you know, I know a lot of people are seeing this, but, you know, it's very interesting to me to watch how many people want to accuse Trump of following Hitler's regime when it is the media and it is the elitist structures that are following that regime. And just, you know, you can see it. They've done the book burnings, they've done the flag burnings, they've done the censorship now. These are all the same tactics that were used back in those times. And so it's like, okay, if we can't beat this information, if we can't beat it down, if we can't tear it down, then let's destroy it. We'll get rid of it, we'll censor it, we'll block it, we'll remove it. And so this is the challenging thing. The very interesting thing is we do see some anons that are fighting back. They're stepping up. They're bringing lawsuits against YouTube. They're bringing lawsuits against Facebook. And this is actually what they should do, because they actually are in violation of certain rights when they're doing this censorship. It doesn't matter that they're a private company. They're actually violating certain rights. And you can actually look that up. It has to do with, and you may have heard about it, a 203 clause in some of the legal laws, and if you just pull that up, you'll probably get enough information up on it. But this is why when you go to do a search, almost the only thing that's coming up now for a lot of people is mainstream media. It's only the sources that are part of the elitist structure that are coming out. So it's harder and harder. You'll have to get to further pages down the line, or, you know, you're going to have to search on other things, other platforms than the main Google platforms, for example, because unfortunately they're kind of all tied in together in many ways. So you have to get off of some of those mainstream platforms where you have a little more ability to access the other information, but you might have to dig a little bit more as the censorship is put into place in strong ways. So I think this is something we could still see over the next couple of weeks, definitely with the elections coming up. It's a very sensitive time. Anything can turn any direction. At this point, it's kind of a crazy thing. I know I have my thoughts on how it's going to go, but, you know, that's that's the way it is. And by the way, I'm going to do an election day special with the guys in the UK, Jared and Richard, and you might want to tune in that because we're going to do a big long event on that will be a live broadcast of what's happening, what we're seeing in the different states. I'll be doing code insights about what's going on with the election, the people involved in the election, the candidates, all of that stuff. So it's going to be a great time. Actually, I think we're going to have some great discussions on it and opening up some things, and we're going to have a lot of fun with it. So, hopefully you can join us. Again, I'll post those links on my website. If you don't see it on my website, look up Paranormal Now, and it will be on their platform on YouTube. So there's that part of it. So these are the tactics that they're using. And so while they try to claim as going against community guidelines, like when you post something, oh, we're blocking this because it's going against our community guidelines, in reality, what they're doing is allowing things that go against the guidelines if they support the desired narrative, while those that are within the guidelines can oftentimes still get removed if they do not support the narrative. So this is very important. It's really not about whether somebody's meeting the guidelines or not meeting the guidelines at this point. It's about whether they support the narrative or not. So it's okay, for example, for extremist groups to post where and when and how they're going to kill people, which they've done. The proof is out there. Do a little research, you'll find it. And where they're meeting up for violent attacks, where they're going to meet up and create riots. These are all out there on these platforms right now, and they're not being censored. Outright threats, outright violence being discussed of who they're going to kill and making sure that people have things together. But it seems that right now, even people that are doing some basic healing work, they're not even necessarily anons, they're just doing basic healing work, basic natural remedy things, are finding bans coming down on them, are finding restrictions placed on them. So I, for example, had a comment of mine recently, well, it was maybe about a month or so, a month and a half ago, something like that, removed, and they claimed that my comment was abusive. And this is exactly what my comment said. I wish you great happiness. Apparently, wishing somebody great happiness is absolutely abusive now. Go figure that one out. But that's what they claim. So the bans here again are not just about the content. It can be about, hey, we know you support Trump, or we know that you are not part of our narrative. Therefore, we are going to start censoring. We're going to start blocking things. We're going to start removing things. So you're not, you may not even have a lot of political stuff on your page. I have some, I admit it, but I don't have as much, definitely, as a lot of other people. And yet, people that I know that basically, they might post the rare thing once every 3 or 4 weeks or something like that, that might have a political slant to it. And they're finding stuff getting banned. People that don't even really post anything political. So that means that they've been tracked down somehow to know that they are voting a certain way and they're being targeted. So, this is a nasty, nasty game that we're in the midst of it. And so what they're doing is they might be banning the people with the large followers, and then people like myself who don't have hardly any followers at this point. And I do expect, and I've talked with other people that are doing some exposure work, bringing things out in these more unbiased ways, if you want to say, or in these ways that bring in other discussion, thoughts, and dynamics to them, are simply being made invisible. We're simply not now being found in the searches anymore, type of thing. So the reason that Trump is always saying that the media is the enemy of the people is because the media is always pushing their own mind control and mass propaganda. This is why he says it. Censorship, like what we're seeing now, is proving that. Every day they are making it clearer and clearer that they don't want people to know anything other than what they want them to know. And the media is the elite. That's the connection. The media is the elite in motion. They are the people that are executing for the elite. Okay? And that the exception to that is some of the independent sources that are out there. You have a few sources out there. They're really honestly trying to report the news. They are not going to be silenced. They are not going to play the games. And, so, some of those are not part of that structure. It's like every politician is not automatically part of the elite structure or part of the corrupt system. There's so-called good guys and bad guys on both sides of the fence. It's not specific to party, even though a lot of it is happening through maybe one particular party or one particular area. Even though there may be a lot of world leaders that have fallen into the corruption, there are a lot that don't want any part of it and are moving out of it. So we need to be careful about making these stereotypes and things. But basically, when we look at mainstream media, that is the elite. That is the, again, people that are executing the elite's ideas and desires. And so this is an aspect of, the media is mostly concerned, they're not concerned about getting the truth out at all. They're concerned about regurgitating these talking points. Their job is to make you believe something. Their job is not about reporting the news. It is about making sure that your mind thinks in a certain direction. So it's really about mind control is what we're talking about. Mass media is all about shaping the thoughts, the opinions, the attitudes, and it's used to define what is normal and what is accepted. Through the media, they set those standards. And these are not basic guidelines or standards. These are what the elite want you to see and believe because it allows them to have control over you. So the question is, by whose terms is it normal and accepted? So contrary to the belief of many people, media is not the voice of the people. It's absolutely not the voice of the people, except for, again, some of those independent sources. It's run by a handful of people that want control, and they seek to manipulate people into behaving and acting the way that they want them to act. And the media is the greatest tool they have to do that. Okay? This is why it is also the people's greatest enemy. Because every source of information used, whether it's TV, it's radio, it's advertising, it's music, it's entertainment, celebrities, books, games, the internet, whatever it is, they use all of these sources. And so they saturate your mind with certain mindsets, with certain programs, with certain thoughts. They pay for these studies so they know how to direct your mind in these certain areas. And, you can ask pretty much anybody who is in marketing, I would say, probably, about this, and they'll say, yeah, every ad that's put out there, every, marketing piece is done to guide people in a certain direction, to get them to take a certain action in things. So while the media is, in its pure sense, a very important tool for large democracy, we have to be very careful about it, because sadly it has become a strong tool for dictatorship and other unfavorable agendas that are against the democracy, that are against people having power. So it all depends on who is running it. This is a key point for us to keep in mind with anything. Nothing is absolutely 100% good or bad, okay? It's how it is being used. And Jesse used to say this a lot. It's how it's used. It's who's running the show. It's who's behind it, because everything in its pure sense is fantastic. And everything in its distorted sense is really, really a nasty thing to deal with. So it really depends on the vibration it's in, and that vibration is influenced by who's running the show. It's influenced by how it's being used. It's influenced by what is coming through it. So this really is no different than, like I said, most everything else in the world. It's got a pure and a valuable essence that, and the media has that. They are an incredible tool. But if it's sitting in the wrong hands, if it's being used in its distorted energy, and it's being used in a destructive way, then it's not our friend. And that is what we're seeing today. And this has been building up for decades and decades and decades. And, we didn't used to have TVs all the time. So pretty much as long as we've had TVs and we've had the heavy media, this is where this mind control has kind of gone into overdrive. It's why bigger scale agendas have been able to be put into place, been thought about, and been considered. So I pulled this quote off of a page, and I will put the link to this page because it has a ton of good information about how the media works, the media mindset, the tactics that are used, and how the media is used. And it lays out a whole bunch of the elite structure in there, which is really valuable to take a look at if you're not familiar with it. So I'll put that link in the comments. But from that page, one of the quotes I pulled off was that Aldous Huxley warned us about this in 1958. So 1958, when he published the book, A Brave New World, okay, he warned us about this. And this is a quote from him from the book. Impersonal forces over which we have almost no control seem to be pushing us all in the direction of the brave new worldian nightmare. And this impersonal pushing is being consciously accelerated by representatives of commercial and political organizations who have developed a number of new techniques for manipulating, in the interest of some minority, the thoughts and feelings of the masses. So flat out, he is spelling it out. Back in 1958, this is what they are doing. Okay? He's flat out saying that we can't even see on the surface who the players are. That same way that you don't see the puppeteer a lot of times when you're watching a puppet show. It's a very similar concept there. And they are not concerned about your well-being. They're not concerned about promoting what is in your best interest or what's really going to help you. It's an impersonal thing. They have no personal connection because, as you'll find out as I get into the concepts of the elite, they really don't have the aspects of empathy or caring about people. And so it is completely impersonal to them. They have no connection or concern for the consequences of what they're putting out there. But it is strictly about controlling the thoughts and feelings of people. So they know enough to know that people have that, but, it's all about power and control. So in PR, what I found interesting, and this is to give an example of what happens with this media mindset and the programming, is NPR reported a study done on Sherry Towers, She's a professor that was associated with a university in Arizona. And she had a team of researchers that looked at, she actually is a contagion disease specialist, which is, I found very interesting to bring out at this time when we've been dealing with contagious disease aspects in our culture and our society. And she had a thought come up at one point about, I wonder if violence and shootings and things like this have a contagion factor to them the same way a disease would have it. And so she went into this research to see what might be similar to how diseases spread in there. And this is a quote. What we found was that for the mass killings, so these are high-profile mass killings where there are at least 4 people killed, there was significant evidence of contagion, says Towers. We also found significant evidence of contagion in the school shootings. So Towers and her colleagues also found that what set apart shootings that were contagious was the amount of media coverage they received. She says, in the incidences where there were 4 or more people killed and even school shootings, those tended to get national and even international media attention. So she also found that there is a window when a shooting is most likely to lead to more incidents, which is about a 2-week period of things. So when you look at what's been happening in the riots of our world, think about this for a second, right? Mass media coverage on things, mass media coverage about this destruction that is happening. And so that then on that mass level triggers these other ones to pop up. Now, yes, there's a puppeteer behind it, as we've learned along the way, but in the midst of that, it continues this contagion effect. So more people get the idea, let me go out and shoot somebody, let me go out and do a mass killing spree, let me do this, it's okay to abuse. We see this in the Antifa tactics that were being used on people and attacking vehicles and, you know, these sorts of things. And so it's a contagion thing. So it's never really left the media since it started back in, what, March, April? And here we are 6 months later. So over the last 6 months, it's been perpetual, this concept of what's going on. And it's perpetually pushed people because of this media coverage. So as you can see, the media is being used to literally antagonize violence. And I think one of the things that we will see as the re-election happens is that there will be more accountability on the part of the media through studies like this showing that they have contributed to murder, that they have contributed to deaths. And that will show up in both, I think, riots and in virus aspects. So I think that they're going to start being held accountable. And this is an important and valuable thing. And this is different than censorship. Accountability works with the law. Accountability is about holding people to be responsible for their actions versus removing them, censoring them, slandering them, things like this. So I think that we're actually going to see more of that come into play right now. And I will also post a link for that NPR article, and that has several links in it where you can get in and access the studies as well to that. So what we're seeing is that the media is literally creating this contagion effect, and that means when the media is not sharing the truth and operating from agendas, then lies can easily spread like wildfires. So if they're not sharing the truth and they're operating under these agendas, the lies become rampant. Because for a lot of people, that's all they're seeing. So they're not getting the whole truth. They're not getting the whole information. They're only seeing what the media wants them to see, which is what they are told to show. Okay? So the key in the media mindset is that the elitist mindset believes that people cannot think for themselves. So this is where the media mindset is a branch in a way, or an aspect or a piece of the elitist mindset. And they believe people cannot think for themselves. They think that you are too stupid to know what you need and what you want and what is best for you. And that you know, and it's not even about that. They actually really fear your intelligence, if you want to get down to it. They're afraid that you are smart enough to see the truth. They're afraid that if you know the truth, you'll never succumb to being their slave. You'll never succumb to their control. And that's exactly true, because if you did know the truth, you never would take that path. You never would walk down there. You would never say, yo, yeah, put me in slavery and, you know, do all of these terrible things to me and make my life miserable and give me no freedom and never let me walk down a nature trail and all of these other things. You'd never agree to it. So they have to manipulate you into it. They have to control your thoughts to move you in a way to make you think that it's your own choice, and to show you only what they want you to see so that you will believe that you're deciding the right thing, even though you're supporting something that's maybe incredibly destructive. So what they mean by this is that people naturally have too much of a conscience. This is what they actually state. They have too much of a conscience to go along with their agendas. Of course, because your true nature is a soul nature, and your soul nature would never allow you to agree to these agendas. So therefore, they have to be told what to think, because unless the media is harnessed to feed the elitist mindset into the public in order to control them, to think in a way that will support them in keeping this elitist power and control. So, you know, what they're saying is you've got too much God energy in you. You've got too much divine presence in you to willingly take this path. So until we block out your ability to find the actual truth, until we use the media to control you, you will not do what we want. That's what this is saying. Okay, so they use them in this way to maintain their power and control, because without it, there would be no power and control by the elitists. There would be no elitist structure happening. Okay, so these are big, big things. Now, many people have thought, and keep in mind, a lot of people say, I just can't believe you support Trump, blah, 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 blah. Okay. It's not all about Trump. It's not all about parties. And regardless of what you think and feel about Trump, the reality of it is he's serving an incredibly important purpose in all of this. And many want to believe that he is an elitist, that he is part of this whole thing. And he actually is not. Matter of fact, he is against the elitist, and that is why he has been under such heart attack by them. And it is the elitist mindset who has been programming through the media how evil it is. They actually have the documentation now of Hillary Clinton coming through and calling for this coup against him. They have the actual documentation now, and we're going to be seeing this come out. So there's no question it's going to become evident, where she called for this constant attack, abuse, and many other things upon him, to try to destroy him. And what happened was they were really hoping that they could take Trump and convert him and make him one of them, and then put him into politics, and they would have all the power in the world. Well, they didn't know Trump very well, because Trump doesn't work that way. Yes, he has money. Yes, he has financial influence in the world, things like this. But that doesn't mean that he works from the elitist mindset. So I'm going to talk about all the key points that go to an elitist and what Trump is doing, so that we can actually look at those side by side, if you want to say that. And he repeatedly, by the way, has done just the opposite of the elitist agendas. And he's called the people to question the media, not accept it like the elitist wants you to, but to question it. Do your research, get out, find out more information about this. Don't accept it for blind truth. So when your anons are being demonized, when your anons are being taken down, what is happening? They're also asking you to do your own research. Find this out. Don't accept things at face value. And this is very, very important. This is spirit alignment. Spirit alignment doesn't just take things at face value. Spirit alignment runs it through all of these different channels of tuning into itself, of researching things, of looking at it from multiple perspectives. Okay, so it's not just face value thing. And they don't want you to do that. They want you to just take what they say. So Trump has repeatedly called them out for their lies and their injustices, and he wants to hold them accountable for their role in mass hysteria, their fear-mongering, and more things along that line. So this is something, again, that I really think we're going to see come out in his second term, that he's going to be doing this. And he's already put that in motion as a result of some of the censorship that has been going. So he's taking all of their tactics and turning them against them, basically, is what he's doing. He repeatedly calls to the people, take a look at what they have done. They being the elitists, they being the media. Take a look at what they have done. He says, look things up, research them, learn them for yourself. And this is exactly the opposite of the media, who seeks to control and manipulate a thought and to make it fit into their little pretty box that they decorate up so that you don't feel like you're getting something as bad as you're getting. In there, you know, it's kind of like somebody that wraps up a turd and puts it in a box, but you think the turd's okay because it came in a pretty box. And that's the same way the media works. That's the same way the elitist mindset works. And this is the way, it's the way that media shares the information, and the people that they are run by, again, that is the real danger here. Okay, it's not that we have a media, because a media working ethically and with integrity is a fabulous thing. But when it's run by the wrong people and how they're doing things, it's a real danger to the people, to the point of literally costing lives, literally creating murders. So again, I'll put another link into the comments area that will be for the elitist beliefs, globalistagenda.org. And you can look up really what some of these beliefs are completely. But so what the elitists want us to believe, the elitists want only those that prove their worth over many generations through dominance and control. And so they want people that are going to validate them. And we know this is not the soul's path right off the bat. We know when you're looking for all this tons of validation to prove your worth, you know you're not on the right track. That's just a key basic of soul aspects, of spiritual aspects. They want people to value and support their dominance and their control so that they can rule, and to feel as if they are worthy of being in their circles. You know, the more people that they recruit in, it's like a MLM type of thing. The more people that they recruit in, the higher up the ladder they go. And the more power that they're given in the elite circles, the more credit they're given, because what you're proving in that is that you can influence people. Now, Trump, what is he doing with that? He's rolling back regulations and restrictions to give the people opportunities to succeed through a desire for personal excelling. So the elitist mindset is exclusive. You can only become a part of us if you do A, B, C, and D, and you prove your worth, and you prove that you will uphold this over many generations, which is why we see this run through many generations, whether you look at the Bushes or you look at other families or the Clintons or whatever. It goes on and on. You have to prove your worth to be a part of them, so to say. So it's all about this better than master-slave kind of pattern existence. So it's very exclusive. And they want you to believe that all their insecurities and what they're doing is a good thing. Like that's something you should be striving for. But it's not. What we want is something that is inclusive. And inclusive provides the opportunities to the people. It allows the individual to succeed. It values their uniqueness. It values them and the skill sets that they bring to the table versus what they are told they have to have in something. So these are very different structures. It's a 180 structure. What Trump is doing is 180 to the elite. It is completely opposite of the elite. And he wants to see people have that personal excellence. So this is part of rolling it back, because if you don't roll back those regulations and restrictions, then what are you doing? You're removing opportunities from people. This is why the elitist structure has put so many regulations in place. It hasn't been for your benefit. It hasn't been because they care about the environment. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with control. It has to do with removing the middle class. It has to do with removing opportunities. So Trump is removing the regulations and providing opportunities. Exactly the opposite. The elitists believe in practicing eugenics, and they want to seek to control the population. Hello, here's Gates, right? This is right here where we know Gates is part of this elitist mindset. And why do they want to control the population? What do they want to do with them? They want to make them more docile, more controlled, stupid, and compliant. That is what their guidelines are. We want to make them more docile, controlled, stupid, and compliant. And we only want people to breed. We only want to breed among ourselves, because if we start outbreeding and hybriding, then we lose our superiority. So the inbreeding and the sexual activity with siblings or whatever else that they choose to do, or within their class, maybe it's not siblings, and we know in certain people who have hit the news recently, there's some pieces about that. But anyways, that aside, they like to keep it within their own class, their own eliteness. And here again, because the elite understand the power they're trying to uphold. If you bring somebody in who doesn't have that mindset, then they're going to upheave the cart, so to say, and that things. So this was exposed, for example, in Hitler's regime, which pushed them temporarily underground. So this eugenics concept was exposed in Hitler's time. So Hitler is really part of the elitist. So if Trump is doing the exact opposite of what the elitist wants, there's no way he can have a Hitler. There's no way he's carrying out Hitler's regime, so to say. It's just he's doing exactly the opposite. But the elitists are holding this regime into place. So Trump said people should be able to marry who they want, and that people have an innate intelligence to think for himself. So whereas the elitists say, hey, you're too stupid and we want to keep you stupid, Trump says, you're intelligent, you can make use of that intelligence, let me create ways that you have opportunities to use your intelligence. And he believes that people can think for himself, and this is why he encourages people, go out and do the research, go out and look things up, see for yourself. And he wants them to see what is happening. He genuinely wants to see it, because when you see it for yourself, that's when you really start to understand it. So he has supported people in gay marriages, mixed race marriages, interfaith marriages, all kinds of aspects like that. He's increased opportunities for people to enhance opportunities for education. Okay? None of that coincides with the elitist mindset. He wouldn't be doing those things if he hasn't. And we've had previous presidents in who were aligned with the elitist mindsets, and they didn't do these things that Trump is doing. So he is 180 from that. Elitists actually tend to be psychopaths, and it's something like at least 80% or something like that that are in the psychopath diagnosis or energy. And what that is about is they have no conscience, they have a lust for power and control, and they are capable of anything. They will stop at nothing. Who have we seen this from? We've seen this behavior come out of Hillary Clinton. We've seen this behavior come out of Nancy Pelosi. We've seen this behavior come out of Alexandria Cortez, AOC as they call her. We see this come out of Governor Newsom. We see this come out of Gretchen Whitmer, the Michigan governor. I mean, we see this in some of the governors that are out there that have been involved in the nursing home scandals and the deaths and the murders there. So you see, they don't really care. They don't have a conscience about what they're doing. They don't care about the lives that they destroy. And they flat out said, I wish Trump would die. They're saying that people don't support them in their elitist ways, and if they're not part of their elitist structure, that they're going to be hunted down, tormented, murdered. Gates is part of this. Let's just wipe out the population. Let's just wipe out X amount of the population. This is psychopathic behavior, okay? I've heard them do the projection things and say Trump's a psychopath, but let's take a look. Trump cares about people's ability to care for themselves and their family. He's reportedly been known to pay off debts and homes or medical expenses for people that have shown true compassion or who are in true need. He has watched and done these things. He has a caring for people. He didn't need to step in and be president. He had nothing to gain by being president. He's not taking a financial aspect in his presidency. He's not taking a paycheck. It's all being donated out. Repeatedly, the steps he is taking shows that he cares. He's pulled us out of wars. These are all opposite of the bloodthirstiness. This is all opposite of the elite structure. The elite structure says that the ends justify the means, so that it is okay to lie as long as they get what they want. This is their rules. It's okay if I lie, it's okay if I deceive you, it's okay if I manipulate you, it's okay if I destroy life, as long as I get what I want. Well, Gates is a pretty darn good example of that. Who is doing that? There's other people and world leaders that are doing this right now. There's no problem in lying as long as they win. So it's okay for them to say, oh yeah, I support fracking when they don't support fracking. It's okay for them to say, oh yeah, I care about the environment when they don't care about the environment. They're all lies. And it doesn't matter because in their book, all the lies are okay. We know in a soul's path that lies are not okay. We know that this is not the way of the soul. This is not how the soul functions. That is not the foundation of how the soul operates, and it's not the path of divine presence in here. So this is 180 to the soul's way in things. They feel it's okay to destroy the human race as long as they can remain in power. That's what eugenics is all about. Let's cripple people. Let's destroy them. Let's put them at our mercy. Let's make them victims to us. Let's make them slaves to us. And they're headed in that direction, making a world of slavery. That's pretty cool to them. Let's just have some slaves and we'll be our little elite class, and we'll have those that make sure that our orders get followed out and our desires are followed out, and they'll be, the ones that are just under us. And then there will be no middle class, and then, we'll have the poor down there that will do whatever we want them to do because they're at our mercy, and if they don't, then we'll just get rid of them. There's no caring there. There's no concern. There's no empathy. So what does Trump want? Trump wants a fair election. He wants people to know the truth. He constantly calls out lies being told by those connected to the elite structures. This is not bullying. This is take a look. This is, I'm calling out the lies. I'm standing with the truth. And there's a difference there. But the elite would like you to believe that he's this awful man. And he said, I'll turn over power if the election is fair. But if it's not fair, I'm going to keep fighting for the truth, and I'm going to keep fighting this elite structure. It's pretty clear cut. The elite uses religions and esoteric systems to infiltrate hidden messages that are only understood by their own so-called enlightened ones. And they use symbolism throughout media and other forms to communicate with each other and to know who is on their side. This is why you constantly hear the aspect of symbolism will be their downfall. Symbolism will be their downfall because it shows their connections to one another. and it exposes things. Now, the sad part of this, having been a person who's very well versed in different esoteric systems, unfortunately, this has brought a bad rap to some of the esoteric mindsets and practices that are out there that are very peaceful and who are not about control and who very much support individuality. So this is one of those areas we have to really use some caution, because this is, they've hijacked things to use this. And this is why you see a division happening in churches and religions right now of taking these different political sides in things. And you can tell based on the side they're taking, really, in many ways, whether they're supporting the elite structure or not. Certainly the Catholic Church came under fire for a lot of things. Certainly other religions are. We're seeing a division within the Jewish community right now by those that are seeing different pieces of things and seeing different sides of the story, and they're starting to realize, hey, maybe some of what we've been told isn't what's really happening. So there's all kinds of different things. And why do they use this? Because they know these are great ways to divide people, and they're great ways to stay hidden or underneath the radar, so to say. So Trump, what does he do? He places God first, not specifically religion. He's okay with whatever religion you want to do, but his thing is God first, divine first. This is the soul's path as well, by the way, in case you're wondering. The soul's path always places the God and the divine presence energy first. It's a God-centered life versus a material-centered life versus power and control over other people kind of life. Okay? He knows that God-centered belief systems are rooted in divine truth. That's their very essence. He knows that symbolism is not needed to know God or to communicate with God or divine presence, because that connection's within each one of us. And this is why he's placed such an emphasis on let the churches be open, let them find safe ways to hold their congregations, things like this. Okay, because he understands the importance of keeping the God energy alive. If people aren't worshiping in their churches, if they're not able to go and have that God connection, we're losing that God connection in our world. And so the esoteric system, not the esoteric system, but the elite system, they use these esoteric forms because they don't have to accept God in them. They use these different religions to create these distortions and these blurs in things. And when you get down to it, they're not placing God first, they're placing the other things first. So again, we have a 180 difference here. The elite see collectivism as the best form of social control. According to the UN, totalitarian China is the role model for this. They are the role model for the future. So the UN is flat out saying, we want to model the world around the China communist dictator socialist structure. So they see that as the best way of social control, people control. That's what it is about. It's not about what is best for the world. It's not about preserving open spaces so we move everybody into these little city communities and things like that. It is about control. And China is the one country who has been able to gain that full control over its people, who have been able to gain social control. Trump wants the people to rule. He's not looking for the elite to rule. He wants the people to have the voice. And he seeks to break down totalitarian structures. So again, we see the 180. The elite views a rising population as a threat to their control and dominance. It has nothing to do with overpopulation destroying the earth. Overpopulation is a threat to their control and dominance. You understand this? But they use the environment as their scapegoat. They use their environment to pull on the heartstrings and say, you're damaging the environment, and this is why we must control you. This is why we must have total control over your life. And there's so many people that have bought into this. Jessie had believed a lot of it, and she was finding out the truth before she left and I came in. And she, the reality of it is probably 95% of what has been put through the environmentalist channels is a lie. It's a flat out lie. The global warming is a lie. All of those things, it's amazing. It's amazing how much of it is a lie. Does that mean that we have no reason to be concerned or care about our environment? Of course not. We need to care. We need to take care of it. And this is why you hear Trump talking about environmental management, working with things, doing things to work with it. But we are not at the stages that the elite want you to believe that we're at. It's a very interesting piece of how they've used so much fear in this, but it's about social control. It is about control and dominance for them. So a rising population, they realize that a large population, the larger the population is, the more likely they are to be overthrown and to be removed from their power. And that's all they care about. They don't care about what's happening to the environment, because when you get down to it, the environment's incredibly resilient. And when the environment feels like there's too many people on the earth, guess what? It has a natural disaster and it wipes people out. It takes care of itself in so many ways. But this isn't about that. For the elite, they're afraid if there's too many people on this planet, especially in certain cultures like the African American culture, the Indian culture, Mexican or Hispanic cultures. This is why they create a lot of racism around. And this is why they attack those cultures and they weaken them and they do what they can to suppress them, because they know they are fertile cultures. They know that these people can have a lot of babies. And part of why they have a lot of babies is because not very many of them survive through the course to get into adulthood. But they want certain things, and they want to move in certain directions towards freedom and being out of these control structures. And so they know these people are emotional. They know they have a lot of soul in them, these cultures. And so when their population grows, it terrifies the elite. It absolutely terrifies them. So their biggest threat actually is the middle class. And that's due to a combination of a certain educational or intelligence level and the ability to make an impact. They have enough money that they could do a grassroots organization, that they can make an impact, that they could do something that could create upheaval for the elite. This is why they want to destroy the middle class, and they want to make the public equally poor. So what they do strive to do is to have the elite class and everybody else in equally poor down here. And so when you look at this structure, this is why they try to put these racist things in regards to the police and the black culture, for example, or the Hispanic culture, or things like this. And they try to create this division among humanity over these issues. Now, that's not to say there aren't any bad cops out there. There are, and they should be held accountable. But that doesn't mean you get rid of your police force. That doesn't mean that you portray these blacks as needing help. You know what? Because there's a lot of very well-off black people out there. There's a lot of Hispanic people doing well, a lot of Asian people doing well. There's a lot of people of a lot of different races that are doing well for themselves, and they are in that middle class income. The elite wants to throw them back into slavery. That's what the elite wants to do. They don't want to free them. They don't want to give them opportunities. They want to alleviate this middle class. Again, either you're with us or you're against us. So either you're going to be in the elite or you're going to be in the poor. And that's the way they view things. Now let's look at something, especially in relation to how Trump handled the virus. he supports small business. And he's focused on strengthening the middle class, not tearing it down, but strengthening it. And he realizes that there's numerous, he put numerous policies in place to help give these different cultures opportunities, to support the middle class, to bring more people into the middle class structure. He realizes that it's the farmers and others that are in this middle class space that is where our true strength is. That is where the people have the power. That's where they have the say. So he understands what the elite are doing. He understands what their playbook is, but he wants to now say, no, the only way to keep the elite in check is to have a good, strong population in the middle class. This is really where your equality is. It's not an elite and poverty, which is what happens in the tax systems, which is what happens in these elite structures. The equality is here. It doesn't mean that we all live in the same type of house or we have, cookie cutter lifestyles or any of that, but that we all have more equal in power. We have more equality and influence in the world. We all have actually a voice and the ability to make an influence because we're not in the deprivation spaces. So he's put a lot of emphasis on supporting the middle class and realizes that really the middle class is the key to people maintaining their freedom. They're the key in this, that they are the ones that have the ability to prevent complete elitism control and things. So the elitists, they want to maintain their minority dominance. Okay, they don't really want a lot of people to join their elite structure, no matter what, which is why they use them, and they'll keep having people run around and do all these nasty things in the world as an attempt to try to get in their structure, and they're never going to let them in their structure because they don't want that. They want minority dominance, and they've been planning these things for decades and centuries in advance. This is one of the assets they have, is they think many years in advance. This is why by the time some technology hits the mainstream public, the government's been using it for 70 years. We're just seeing some things come out into the mainstream public view that the government's been using since the 50s or the 60s in weaponry, in defense systems and things like this. It's amazing. So they think these decades and these things in ahead. Take the 2030 plan, right? That's 10 years away. But they've been planning this for 10 years. There's, these different pandemics that they release into the world, and they've planned them for decades. They've met many times to discuss them and to talk about them and to refine everything so that it can be as smooth as they can possibly make it into the world. And so that planning has been to their assets, and they cannot leave social evolution to chance, okay? Because that's too risky. There's too much risk that they won't be able to maintain their dominance in basic social evolution. It's likely to cause them to lose their power. So when we look at this aspect, what does Trump do? He's continuously defeating their plans. He encourages people to be proactive in how the world's going to evolve. He constantly exposes the plans that are in motion, and he calls the people to take up action legally and peacefully, and encourages them not to be silenced and to stand up for their rights instead of turning them over to plans that are already in place. He's saying, you don't have to follow these plans. You don't have to tell them do what they want you to do. And it's not a good thing to do what they want you to do. It's not going to benefit you. So this is why he says, let's have a peaceful protest. He supports peaceful protest. He doesn't support riots, but he does support peaceful protests, because the riots are based in the elitist structure. The peaceful protests are based in the people standing up for themselves. Huge difference. The elitist uses a revelation of method, and this means that they are always disclosing what they are going to do. This is one of their guidelines. They've got to disclose what they're going to do. Here again, this is where the media becomes very helpful. So they do it through media. They do it particularly through movies and TV and shows and books and this type of thing. And they sell it to you as public entertainment, right? This is where you get addicted and hooked onto these shows because they're telling you how it's going to be. And yet they know you won't take it for what it really is, so they put it in this form of entertainment, and you say, well, it's only a movie, it's only a TV show. Well, you know what? No, it's a plan. It's something that they have in motion right now. And it's not just entertainment, but they package it that way so that you will take an interest in it, and you'll start to put your mind to work on their plans. So they believe really that someone is too stupid to see this. They think that people are too stupid to say, oh yeah, what's happening in that show is actually being planned right now, or what happened in that movie is actually something that they're trying to implement. Let's look at the past administration. Everything was being set up to follow the Red Dawn movie structure. And had they had another term or two, they would have succeeded. But Trump stepped in and interfered with their plans. Okay? This aspect of feeling you're too stupid to see it, what this is really about, it's a type of ritual for them. And it's a ritual where they are mocking the victim. This is why they do that symbolism. You'll see in the different videos they cut throughout the pandemic that they had certain symbolisms. They all had the Corona typewriter, for example, things like that. And this was a mocking of people. This was a mocking of the people. This wasn't about, this wasn't about, oh, look, all the celebrities have a Corona typewriter. This was mocking people. This was sending messages. This is reinforcing their sense of superiority to the average person. That's what it's all about. Trump, what does he do? He calls it out. He says, look at the typewriters, look at this, look at that, look at that. He points it all out. He's not living in some delusional world. He's merely pointing out the obvious that is there. He sees what is happening. He wants to help people to see what is happening, and he wants them to see these methods of how people are being mocked by the media, how they are being mocked, how they are using these different channels to implement their plans and to tell you what they're going to do. All he's doing is calling attention to it. That's all he's doing. So everything that Trump has been doing and setting in motion and signing executive orders on is against the principles of the elite. It's designed to bring down elitism control. Okay? Like him or not, everything he is doing is breaking the elite structure down. So while the elite reach, while it may seem very massive and very overwhelming, they're really a very few people. And so with all of these people that are being exposed, all these scandals that are being exposed, you know, they used to be able to write it off and say, these are just conspiracy theories, these are just that. Well, guess what? These are conspiracies in action. They're being proven true. They're not just, yeah, they're conspiracies, but they're conspiracies by the elite. And the core people behind it, and with each one of these scandals that is exposed, he's hitting into the deeper layers. He's getting more and more into the core. He's pulling back more layers of the onion along the way. And when you get down to it, there's really just very few there. You know, they've built a lot of power in the world. They've built enough fear to maintain a lot of control in the world. And this is why they fear him. Ask yourselves, why are the true elite people all against Trump? It's not an illusion. It's not a ploy there. They're against him because he has enough influence in the world to bring them down. Okay? Like him or not, he is serving a role of bringing the elite down. And that is truth. When you look at the scandals that have unfolded, when you look at the truth that is coming out, when you look at the facts that are there, when you look at the emails that are being exposed, when you look at the things that are being pulled off of the computer hard drives, okay? Everybody said Epstein was a scandal. Well, guess what? Epstein was proven. It's all being proven. It's all being shown. And so when you really get down to it, there's really not that many people in the puppeteer position. There really isn't that many people there. A lot of puppets, but not a lot of puppeteers when you get down to it. So when censorship is happening, we find that it's not about protecting the people, which is common line used by the elite or the elitist expressions out there. They're talking points. They're telling people that what they are doing is for the people's benefit. Always keep that in mind. So you always got to kind of raise a little bit of an eyebrow there when they're saying, oh, well, this is about the environment. Don't you want to save the environment? We have to go to clean fossil fuels. Well, when you get down and do the research, guess what? They're so-called green solutions. So pretty much anything that has green or smart on it is probably built into an elitist agenda. And that's just more mocking. That's just more mocking ritual that they're doing by using it. Look, smart products. Look, you're smart if you buy this product. No, you're not. You're not smart at all in buying those products. We have to be very careful about this. The only thing that they're concerned about is protecting their own elite wealth and interest, period. They don't care about life. They don't care about the environment. They don't care about the air. They don't care about the water. They don't care about those things. So what is happening, and you look at the deal that the White House turned down recently up in Alaska, and I'm going to talk about that, they declined that because it was attached to the elitist structures. It was attached to the elitist aspects. They could see it coming. So what is happening is that when too many people start to think for themselves, it's not the information that is the danger, but the self-thinking that is the danger. And the only danger is to the elite. Because when this happens, the elite no longer have control over the masses. So the elite fear self-thinking, conscience, religion, and other things that teach people to hold their own true nature, which is rooted in truth. And when the masses start paying attention to what is not in alignment with controlling people, because the elite feel the masses are too stupid to think for themselves, which is really just a translation of, we know they are smart enough to not follow us if we tell them the truth, then the only option that they have left is to get rid of the information that they don't want people to know about, either through censorship or completely deleting the information or through banning accounts. So when mass media is used to perpetuate lies and agendas and steer people in dangerous paths, they truly are our greatest enemy. They literally are driving death, and oftentimes through fear. And when they choose to cover the truth up for their own agendas and their own means of staying in control, they are removing consciousness of soul. This isn't just, an earthly battle between Trump and the elite. This is about maintaining consciousness of your soul. It goes so much bigger. It's about remaining and being able to keep an awareness of God and the human mind. And most people can't even conceive that that's being deleted. But just think about it. When you see your social media pages and all of a sudden you haven't seen somebody's post for a while. Well, if you're a person that has a lot of connections, it could be a month or two before you even think, wow, I guess I haven't seen a post in a month or two. They wipe it out, and that awareness is gone almost without you realizing it. And that's why this is so dangerous. They literally will create confusion and chaos in the brain through feeding these lies that are contradictory to their true nature. And when they do this, it makes it easier to program people with what they want. So let's take this from a code perspective. Let's get into the codes on this. Mass media equals mind control. And what this is about is it is about intimidation, manipulation, bullying tactics through dark energy that is not aligned with the soul, being used to manipulate you out of having the ability to make your own decisions and run your own life. It is about removing those things that nurture and support your growth and care about you into a coldness to where you can't trust anything. And like any person who brainwashes another person, they want you to believe that they are the only person you can trust. And they do this by isolation. They do this by removing influences that contradict what they are telling you, or that give you any kind of caring, or that support you in being yourself or being a strong person. They bring you to a stagnation and they tear down your intelligence. They tear down your ability to be in wisdom, and they separate you from home, which is your soul. It's God presence, it's divine presence. It's not a pretty thing. They use a Trojan horse method, which the codes show this is a Trojan horse method. So they always present it to you as a gift. Look, isn't this a gift of what we're going to do for the environment? Look, isn't this a gift how we're helping people? Look, I'm going to tell you what I want you to tell, but that's not what I'm going to do. So within the gift is this devastation of prosperity, this devastation of connection to your true self, which holds abundance, which holds power within itself. It places you in a position of need, and it undermines any success or opportunities for success, and it tells you what to do, and instead of allowing you to take your own journey, it places you in such physical detriment that you cannot heal from it. This is what mind control is about in codes. This is what mass media is about in codes. And when we look at the mind control, it is very specifically connected to the components of using manipulation, false presentation, coercion, telling people what they want to hear in order to get them to take what they're selling. Now remember, anything of pure spirit doesn't have to be sold to us. We don't have to be convinced to take it, because we can already see how great it is. When we have to be convinced of something, when we have to be sold into something, it's probably not of spirit. And it is designed to use this tactic to break down the soul, to break down disconnection, to weaken the body to where it has no resistance, no ability to fight, no ability to stand on its own, and to break down all positive relationships. There's mind control and codes for you. Censorship is about removing your ability to learn and to grow. It is in codes about blocking your education. It's about restricting information to you, and that is very much in line with some of the more traditional definitions of what censorship is. The phrase the media is the enemy of the people is also this. So it's no wonder that censorship and that phrase go hand in hand. And when that phrase comes together in regards to censorship, it is showing where people are being forced into stress in order to be controlled. It shows that stress is being used to break people down. The aspect of banning accounts, and what this is really about, again, has to do with the aspect of banning has to do with removing from soul, removing from connection, removing hope, spirit, faith, things like that, removing or breaking down divine alignment in the name of having control and power, and hopefully bringing an end to the ability to overthrow power through one spirit. The elitist or elitism is all about trying to create the challenges that inhibit success. The codes for elitist or elitism are all about destroying victories and attacking those who are successful not just materially, but spiritually. So it is all about creating trials, tribulations, and challenges for those who are strong of spirit. It is all about doing anything to undermine personal achievement and allowing people to connect in open spirit. And that is the codes. So what do we do about this? We have to stand strong in getting to the truth and realize that everything that we see through media channels can be fabricated. We have to stand up for our rights. We must use what is happening to learn the truth and to realize that we must not allow people and things to influence us or manipulate our decisions on things. We can't be acting out of fear. We can't let them scare us out of standing up for divine presence in this world. We have to connect with the soul. We need to find that true divine connection and stand strongly in that. We have to look at the connections that are out there, not just look at what they're presenting to us and go, oh, I guess this is going to help this cultural group or whatever. We have to look at the connections and go, oh, that was set up and who's running it? Oh, it's being run by the elitist. It's being run by the puppeteers. We have to let them know that we will not be bullied, we will not be threatened, we will not be silenced, and we will use the law and peaceful means to hold them accountable for their crimes against humanity. And we must not allow God and faith, above all, to be removed from our life, our culture, or our society. Okay? Trump never says you have to believe a particular religion or a particular way, but he is not going to let God die in our society in America. And we must not feel guilty. And anybody who is on a spiritual path has got to see the value in that. Whether you like Trump or not, whether you support him or not, you have to be able to see the value of God not being removed from, because once it's removed from America, it's going to be removed from the world. And it's going to be a crime. And people will be put to death for maintaining God energy. That's the path he's preventing right now. So like him or not, bringing God into the world and keeping God in the world is really a pretty good thing. It really is. We can't feel guilty for being who we are or buy into these guilts that we need to bow down to people for lies. And again, you know, this distortion of information and this projection of different things. You didn't cause the suffering. You here and now. If you've caused suffering, then you have accountability for it. If you have not caused the suffering, just because you were born into a certain skin color, that doesn't give you a right to certain things, and it doesn't mean that you're at a deprivation, and it doesn't mean that you have to feel guilty for being born into that skin color, which you had no control over. Yes, we need to be compassionate to people, but be compassionate to people as a person to person, not because of their skin color, not because of what they believe, but because they are another human being existing on this world, because they are a life form. Because compassion is the way of the soul. We've got to fight against things like taxes. They're illegal. We never should have been put under a tax system. We are meant, the taxes are meant to put us into poverty, and that supports the elitist structure. We've got to make ourselves wise to their language so that we can see through things and we can dismantle the destructive plans before they have a chance to really take hold in society and culture. So that's what we can do about it. moving on with that and continuing on some of these aspects of the elitist agenda is one of the big things that is gradually peeking its head up every now and then, is the 2030 agenda, globalism being in motion, and that globalism is a Trojan horse to no end. Boy, it sounds good on the surface. Yeah, let's help the environment, blah, 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 blah. And it has nothing to do with that. It's right back into the control structures. So, you know, environmental concerns is a really next big agenda that's on the schedule. It's a next big thing in motion. And it's going to be the next big tool for manipulation of people and to create separation and division in people, because it plays on the heartstrings of people. It plays on their conscience. It gets people distracted with the issues, right? Who couldn't fall in love with a Greta Thunberg, right? Well, guess what? Greta Thunberg doesn't care about the environment. She's a puppet in the game, and she's not what you think she is. She's not what the media has portrayed her to be. Let's put it that way. Okay, she is nurturing the elitist agenda. Not necessarily her fault, because probably she was given propaganda in school, and the educational system that she was in probably moved her in some of that direction. But here again, people have this conscience about things, and they want to do the right thing. They think they're doing the right thing, and then it's hijacked. It is actually feeding something else. So we have to be very, very careful on this. And we have to be very careful of the companies that they might start off with the right intentions, and then they get scooped up by the elitist structures. And then they're no longer that anymore. It's just like that mom and pop store that all of a sudden becomes a massive chain and they're owned by somebody else. And, you know, we have to watch these little ploys that come up. So what they're going to do is they're going to get people distracted with the issues instead of the puppets behind the issues. So they want to distract us with the destruction of the environment. Oh, the air quality is bad. Oh, the pollution is here. Oh, there's global warming going on. All of these things. Look, oh, the fires in California are global warming. Bullshit. They're not. Those are man-made, and there's proof that they're man-made. And you know, but what are they doing? Here, let's get you fighting among each other so that you can't see what we're really doing up here as the puppeteers. That's what they're doing. That's the real issue. They don't want you to look at them, so they distract you with the issues. They don't want you to see what they're really implementing. So they're doing a lot of prepping right now, and have been for at least the last 10 to 20 years, to bring more into the public eye that's going to support the 2030 agenda. And if you don't know about it, look it up. There's information out there. There's actually a plan. And again, it starts off sounding like it's a good thing, but when you really get into it, and this is tied into the green agenda that Trump talks about a lot of times, the green deals that are being made. This is all about supporting the elitist structures. They are not about what's best for the environment. So fortunately, Trump's put actually a big damper on this by looking at ways to manage the environment in truly friendly ways, while maintaining choice and options and removing restrictions that are not necessary for people. And I emphasize not necessary because, again, tons of restrictions were put into place that were about moving our industry out of this country and into China. It was about moving our business out. It was breaking our infrastructure. It was removing jobs. It was doing a lot of things. And so, you know, a lot of these things were not necessary. They were just meant to feed the elitist structures, to make people poorer, to make them harder, and then to come back and say, look, we have this issue, so now we're going to tax you more for an issue that we created, and we're never really going to fix the issue, but we're going to tell you we're going to fix it through this new Green Deal. Which they're not, because that money's all going to go back to the elitist. It's not going to go to take care of the environment. It's not going to have anything to do with it. It's going to be about putting you in greater control by them. So every so often what I see come around, and I've been seeing it for a while, you know, I've seen it 10 years ago, whatever. I see these pictures of plant buildings. I like to call them plant buildings, and they're like apartment buildings, and they've got the rooftop greenery on them. They're covered in plant life. And they come through the media feeds every now and then. And what is happening is, even though some of these are legitimate, they're from design companies, but we have to remember some of the elitist structures went in and asked the design companies to create these designs for their own benefit, for the own benefit of the elite structures, and not because they did it. But what do they tell these designers? Oh, we want to design this pretty green environment, and by putting the plants on the buildings, we're going to be helping the environment and saving it. Well, there's nothing wrong with having these green spaces. And here again, there's that word, right? Green, just like we have smart. When are they going to start putting smart green spaces together, right? They might be. Maybe we're not far away from that. I probably shouldn't bring it up or give them ideas on that. But they're promoting these green spaces in the city. Now, Jessie worked in Parks and Recreation. That is where her education was in Parks and Recreation Management. And so, as Magi's, we fully support these green spaces. We love having green in the city. People need to be exposed to nature. There are some real great benefits to that. And yes, there's great benefits to growing your own food and transforming just a basic apartment building into, beautiful plant life and merging with it in that sense. But what we have to do is keep in mind, we have to be very careful with this, because what is behind these things, so that we can bring them through, we have to watch what's behind them. We have to watch for that Trojan horse, because we want these things to evolve in their truth and natural evolution to that, and not in the elitist distortion. And that's what we have to be careful of, because it's rooted in control. And I'm sorry, my nose is itching like crazy, so I apologize for that. I don't have any germs, but my nose is itching. So these pictures are getting sent out through the internet, whether it's through a design firm or an ad or different things like that, or whether they've paid people to promote this type of thing, or to post these types of pictures, which they do a lot of that too. So they're being used to prep us for conformity, for restriction, for control, for domination, under this pretty packaging. So again, if you knew the truth of what they were creating, you would never buy into it. But how about if we make it in this pretty picture and say, look, we're going to put plants all over the building. Then you won't realize that that building is a controlled city where we have 100% control over your life, right? So we're sitting there going, oh, isn't that pretty? Isn't that wonderful? Let's share it all around the internet. And again, there's nothing wrong in sharing these things and realizing it. But I ask, if you are going to share these things, that you add your own comments in that say, let's bring this out in the most positive way. Isn't this wonderful to do this? But let's make sure that we are holding it in its truth when we bring it out, and not in the distortions. Whatever your wording is for that, whatever your wording is, but to do something so that we can wrap that loving intention around that picture, around that concept. Because what they're really doing is getting us to accept something that will so-called, they want us to believe that we are saving the environment, that we're creating zero emissions. If you really look into the zero emissions stuff, it's almost impossible to do, because you have certain countries that are never going to support zero emissions, and we're never going to have that in our world as a result. In doing this, what they're doing is they're prepping us to move into their controlled cities, which is part of this 2030 agenda. And you see what this is really about now, right? Here's your space. You're no longer going to be able to get out and enjoy the real environment. So we're going to give you a balcony garden. We're going to do plants on the rooftop of the building that we're going to force you to live in, so that we have total control of your life. But you don't get to go out and enjoy nature. Yeah, so, we preserve these nature spaces. And then what are they going to do? Oh, look at how we're preserving nature. Well, it's not that they're preserving nature or that they care about nature. It's it's about, we're not allowing humans to even go into it anymore. We're not, we're not going to pave the roads in the rural areas anymore, so you don't get to go out and enjoy it. You're not going to be allowed to. They haven't done anything to save the environment.
It's not about that at all. So here they are putting it in this pretty package, the dangling carrot, the shiny diamond, you know. And what it's really about is you will get what we give you, we being the elite. You're going to get what we give you. Everybody will have the same space, the same greenery. This will be your food, and it will be all controlled by the elite, which means it probably isn't even going to be organic or pesticide free or things like that, because they don't want that. They want to keep you weakened. Everyone will have exactly the same. There will be no personal style. There will be no individuality. There will be no exploring outside of their cities. Because if you go explore outside of the cities, and heaven forbid you come across that hermit in the hills that didn't buy into the plan and is okay living off of the land, you just might get an idea in your head that they don't want you to have. You just might figure something out or see something that doesn't fit in with what you've been told, and they can't have that. This is also why we are seeing the destruction of cities come down with this pandemic. This is why we're seeing the cities being destroyed that are aligned with the elitist agendas, that are aligned with elitism, and that have rulers in those cities, governors, senators, whatever, in those cities who are heavy on the elitist structure. Because destroying cities like New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Seattle, they're setting things up to rebuild. This is why they want to receive funding for the riot stuff, for the different things. Well, first of all, they created the destruction. Now they want it to be paid to be rebuilt. Well, the whole intention behind this was to set up to rebuild their cities, the elitist cities, the controlled cities, not rebuild the cities with individual artwork and decoration and individuality. No. And these cities that they want to rebuild will be under full and complete elite control. Okay? So they're now wanting Trump to give them money for destruction that they caused, devastation that they caused, creating hardships on people who are vacating the cities to build these new buildings that are going to be wired up with specific technology that will all be controlled, fully 100% controlled by elitism. And this is supposed to go hand in hand, and they wanted to use this pandemic to put this in motion so that they could start to move people into these controlled cities. All part of the plan. And it's outlined in Agenda 2030. It's there. So by destroying these cities, you know, they want people to think that perhaps they will, you know, people start to think, well, let me move into this rural area. I see it where I am. I'm in a small rural town. And people who they had vacation home here, and now they're living here full time. And they think, well, we'll just move to the more rural areas and not deal with this. Because, you know, that's the way it'll do. But in the 2030 agenda, they're going to stop funding maintenance on roads in the rural areas. They're going to make trucking supplies almost impossible to bring in. You know, there won't be truck routes into these rural areas. You'll have very few highways. And this brings us back to old Nazi Germany aspects. You can only travel on certain roads. We see this in other countries when the communist structures were in place. You can only travel on certain highways. And why is that? Because we can control you when you don't have so many roads that you can get through. So if we don't maintain these roads, you have to come through our channels. Okay? And if you're not getting supplies into your market because the trucks can't get there because the roads are broken down, well then you're not going to have food. So you're going to have to move back into our cities. This is all part of this plan. And we're 10 years away from that. So it's not like they don't have time to implement it if they have control of things. They'll cut off the utilities and just everything. They'll cut off all the resources. So if you don't know how to be 100% self-sufficient, you're not going to make it in a rural area. You're not going to be driving anywhere. if you manage to make that choice to stay in the rural area, you're not going to have interaction because the roads won't be good enough for you to travel. You won't be able to go anywhere. So they'll keep you isolated away from everybody where you can't do any damage and get them thinking for themselves. Okay? They will continue to raise taxes while providing people with less and less to keep them weak and poor, where they do not have the power or the strength to stand up for themselves. So they're going to keep taxing people to a point that they are forced to go into these controlled cities. So the good news is that we don't have to fear these things. I sincerely believe that we can do things like this in their true sense, without the control, without feeding the elite structures. We can offer opportunities for those people that want to be in those types of cities and those types of situations. And we can do it while allowing for choice for those people who want to maintain being in a rural area. We don't have to destroy everything else to make those cities happen. And we can implement things through our own creativity and to style them in our own way. They don't have to be a cookie cutter. Okay? Apartment buildings are enough like that anyways. Office buildings are like that enough anyways. But what makes an office feel different ways when you walk into it, right? It's the family pictures. It's the plants. It's the individual style that is put into that office. And when you don't have that, everything shuts down. Your humanity shuts down. So many of the corrupt plays that are being used right now tie right into this. And that involves things like projection and projecting. And the left claims, the elitist, I should say the elitist, it's not specific that, yes, they've hijacked certain parties, but, the elitist claims, the narrative claims that Trump is destroying the economy and the environment when the left is actually doing that through control and has been doing that by moving businesses to China, creating reliancy on elite structures, forcing people to be in the WHO as opposed to it being an option. Trump realizes that WHO, that the UN, that these organizations are being run by this, and he's not willing to participate. He knows that we will be okay and can be self-sufficient, and that we don't have to rely on these groups and these organizations to be okay, and we can still have good relations with people around the world, and we can still have trade, and we can still do these things without having to be under that elitist control. That's why he's been pulling out of these organizations. So he's been, they've been preparing us to be moving into buildings and structures that are more damaging to the environment and are designed for more control. So let's look at that. People are worried about 5G. Okay, if you're worried about 5G in your own home right now, what happens when you're sitting in a controlled city that doesn't have fresh air, you don't have the ability to open windows, that you are closed into, and you have, a few, let's say in your particular building structure, let's say you have 30,000 people. What do you think is going to happen when you have 30,000 people with all of their Wi-Fi equipment and their 5G technology in this concentrated little space? It's going to magnify it. It's going to be frying people's brains. It's going to be doing damage beyond what you can believe. And the environmental damage that will come out of concentrating that energy like that is going to be horrendous. It's going to be far detrimental than staying the way we are in things. These are the pieces people aren't thinking about. These are the pieces they're not putting together in this. They're using plays like the lies and the censorship. That's a big play that's at hand right now. They claim that Trump's policies, they take hold, they hijack them. It's like we've heard, Biden will claim Trump's policies in order to get elected. And yet they're on record, they're on tape saying exactly the opposite. Fracking's an example. Biden says, oh no, we're not going to frack, but there's numerous recorded instances of where he says, I am never going to allow fracking. Well, fracking is not part of the elitist agendas. It's not part of their structure, which is why they don't want it. It's not about the environment. It's because when people frack, we create energy independence. When we have energy independence, we are not going to play into the elitist control structures. So that's what that's about. It has nothing to do with environmental well-being. So they're hijacking these things. They say the opposite. They use the positive policies as the Trojan horse, even though they've got a whole different agenda in place. So how do we know that Trump isn't doing this? Because when Trump talks, he says, we the people, our country. Okay? This is very, very different. They say, our this, our that. But that doesn't mean the people's this or the people's that. It means the elitism version, the elitist way. It's a threat to our power. Okay? That doesn't mean it's a threat to America's power or the people's power. It means that Trump is a threat to the elitist power, their power. You see, they use words very tricky, and we have to be very careful of them. But when you listen to Trump, most of the time he's saying, this is the land of the people. I want people here. I love to have people from all different places in the world come to America, but I want people here to love the country, not tear it down. There's a very big difference. And what are the elitists supporting? What are the elitist channels supporting? They are saying, we want to bring people in who are going to tear down the country, who will be in our control and our command, indebted to us because we're allowing them in illegally. We're giving them free health care. We're giving them all of these things. So they are under our command. It has nothing to do with caring about cultures coming into America. It has nothing to do with that whatsoever. So this, they say that they see how much of the population is loving what Trump is doing. They love the tax cuts he's putting into place. They love that he is protecting pre-existing conditions. They love that they're getting educational opportunities. They love that they have freedom to pursue their dreams. And anybody almost that has lived in a communist structure and come to America says, we've seen this and we're going to support Trump because he's fighting this. We can see he's fighting it because we've lived through it. So the elite, they want to promise these things, but repeatedly they said they're going to do something else. So they're, here again, remember their rules of conduct. It's okay to lie as long as they get what they want. So the lying means nothing to them because they have no empathy, because they run on a psychopath energy. So they don't care what their lies do. They don't care how many lives it damages. They don't care how many lives are torn down as long as they get what they want. And this projection, and it's a form of projection, what I'm talking about here, is designed to create rebellion. It's designed to create riots. It's designed to destroy freedom. And it's designed to destroy independent thinking and more in this. Because when they come in and they do these things and they play these games and they lie to you, they can get everybody all riled up over these issues. This is why we got to be very careful about not getting riled up too much about the issues. We have to get down to what's happening. We have to stay in the alignment. So this is about picking a fight. That's what it's really about. And what they do is they say the victim is doing what the bully is doing in order to create the havoc and the discord and start the fight. So they say, oh, Trump is lying, Trump is this, Trump is that, when in reality, that's what they are doing. And they do this because they want him to fight with them. They want to create this battle. They want to separate the people, because if they don't separate the people are going to overthrow them. And they know it. If people come together in unity, if they stand in divine presence, if they stand with God energy, they're going to overthrow them. And they get that. They know it. So they're done when the bully thinks that they can beat the victim or to deflect the attention from what the bully is doing. So all they need to do is distract you enough to keep your attention off of what they're really doing. And a distraction through personal attack that forces the victim to defend themselves. And then they use this and they turn others against the victim. And that is exactly what they've done to Trump. That is exactly what has happened to him. And this isn't all about defending Trump. This is pointing out a pattern that is happening. And he's not the only one. There are many people that they have played these games with. It's about understanding the currents that are at play in our world and realizing what we're really dealing with. So let's look at these codes of projection, and projecting. And what are those about? It is about creating turbulence. It's about creating riots. It's about creating rebellions. It's about creating a revolution against freedom. It's about creating a revolution against those who offer choice and individuality. It is about creating a revolution that will destroy hope and joy in the world. That's what projecting and projection is about in codes. It is about destroying the individual. It is about destroying divine presence. Again, we come back to it. It's a pretty common theme when we look at this elitist structure. So what do we do about this? We listen. We pay attention. Are they saying our or our country? Which are they saying? They're not saying our country. They're saying our. Are they saying our or the people? It's always about them. In the elitist structure, it's always about them. It's always about their recognition. And they say we, they say our. But that's not we the people. That's not we as a human race. That is we the elite. And there's a very big difference. But just like the media, they like to cut out that last part that makes the truth. Okay? So we have to learn how to hold things in their truth. We have to learn to not approve things unless they are fully in their truth. So when you're going to vote, when you're going to elections, when you're voting on whether it's an issue or a presidential candidate or somebody else or something else, or we need to hold things in their full truth. And if we do that, we will be in union. We will automatically be in union. But if we're not holding it in the full truth because we're buying into the lies and the distortions, then we are allowing their agendas to unfold. We have to say no to the tax increases. There are ways to pay for things without all these taxes, and the taxes aren't going into these things. They're going into organizations, and you can follow the money trail on this. But the taxes are not really going to support your roads and these things like that. They're going into personal pockets, personal organizations, personal charities. We need to say no to it. Not to mention that it's illegal and unconstitutional, which is why Trump has been doing tax holds, and I sincerely believe he's going to alleviate a lot of taxes on things. From what I can see, that is the nature of his codes, is to break this stuff down, to move us through the challenges, the trials, the tribulations that we're under. That's his codes. And we need to not approve things, again, until they're in that full aspect. But we need to say no to these fundraisers and these donations that are actually supporting the elite structures. We found that out with BLM. It wasn't going to make Black Lives Matter. It was going to support things that Soros was implementing. It was going to support other things. It was going to support the elite structures. We have to stand for our individual creativity. Humans and humanity is not meant to be put in a box. The soul does not operate in a box. God does not operate in a box. So if we allow that individual creativity, that individuality to be destroyed, we are tremendously weakening ourselves. Our strength comes in our different skill sets, in our differences. We have to make certain that we are maintaining our rural areas without destroying it. We need the rural areas for our own well-being, and without them, we are suffocated in controlled cities with no connection to real connection, which is nature or divine presence, because in these structured cities, even the plants probably aren't going to be true nature, but they'll be lab created. They're meant to look pretty. They're not meant to be functional or real or to provide connection or to have the energy that a real plant has, or to even be food for that matter, because they probably won't even be a food source that you can rely on. We have to make ourselves wise to know who is truly behind the developments. We have to make ourselves wise enough to realize how we are being deceived and to accept that, not be so set in our own personal mindset that we can't see the truth or that we're unwilling to look at it because it means we have to go outside of what we've been told all of our lives. Okay? So let's move on to weather, because I know this is dragging on. I know we're building the time up again. I only do something once a month, but there's lots of information to cover. I do want to get through it. So as far as weather patterns go, I have 3 key ones that I pulled out. Tropical storm that turns into a hurricane called Hurricane Zeta, and it's scheduled to hit the whole eastern seaboard on its path. So now a hurricane, again, is connected to freedom, it's connected to choice, it's connected to choosing to live wisely as opposed to being forced into it. And if we don't choose to live wisely, we can be forced into that simplicity, that simplifying, that harmony aspect. Hurricane Zeta has an energy pattern that has a lot to do with exposing lies and corruption and deception. It has a lot to do with bringing peace to where there is corruption. And the eastern seaboard is about, it represents where there are successes happening and where there are attacks on those who are being successful. Well, that pretty much all plays into what's happening on the eastern coast, right? There's been a lot of campaigning going on the eastern coast. There is, Trump, of course, resides on the eastern coast in the White House, and you know, he's been very focused on peace deals, on creating freedom for people, on creating the individuality, and he has been attacked for that. The eastern seaboard beckons us and tells us that we have to learn from our past. We have to learn how to move into making our own choices and not just allow people to manipulate us in a direction that they want us to go. And that there will be attempts of these lies, and that there is heavy lies and deception that is interfering with our freedom and our peace right now. So it's an affirmation, I think, really, that peace and freedom is coming. Yes, there's going to be attempts to disrupt that. We're going to see that going up to the election. We're going to see it after the election. And it's going to be done through lies, deception, and manipulation. And who is getting attacked? Remember, come back to who is being attacked. Trump is being attacked. And why is he being attacked? He's being attacked because he's being successful at bringing peace and this balance and simplifying things and bringing things into giving people their freedom back. And this is very important in there. And we realize that this election is particularly important. So is it any wonder that this hurricane is hitting right at this time? Absolutely not. No surprise at all. Reported back in Davos when Trump was first coming into office, and Soros said that the 2020 election would be the year, and you can look this up, there's videos on it and everything else that have the actual Davos meeting there, and you can hear it for yourself. Soros said that the 2020 election would be the year that would determine who would govern the world, whether he gets it or whether Trump gets it. whether the elite get it or whether the people get it. And if Trump loses, Soros gets command. Simple as that. If he wins, Soros loses command. Of course, Soros isn't going to give that up willingly, which is why we're going to see stuff happening even after the election. But if Trump loses, we will fully be moved into the elitism structure. There's no question about it. We are fighting for our lives. This is beyond Trump. Trump is a catalyst. He's a catalyst for us to stand up for ourselves. He's a catalyst to get us motivated. He's a catalyst for us to look at the truth and to stop being deceived. Now we have in Sandpoint, Alaska, there's a 7.5 earthquake that hit there, and that put them under a tsunami warning, and then that warning was removed. That happened just recently, October 20th. And, you know, again, when we see an earthquake happening, it has to do with control power sources, upheaval in power sources. The Sandpoint energy, again, is about exposing lies and deceptions. Alaska's energy, there's two different components to it. There is the bully control energy that is about silencing people, and then there's the more divine energy, which is connected more to the Trinity and unity aspects. But lots of command and control energy trying to take command over the way people think, the way they, their freedom of choice, again, their prosperity levels, their abundance levels. So having, you know, what's happening in that area right now is there was a huge surge in CV cases. And the governor stands against corruption. And CV is full of corruption. So, you know, there is a little bit of division there. I can see where there have been, Alaska has recently been the target again of the elitists trying to get control of that area. So the earthquake is really a warning. It's really a warning that those who are in control or in power positions have to really stand in strong command if it is not going to be turned over to corruption. They have to really stand up for themselves. They have to really defend it. And it's very hard because when, you know, you see a surge in cases, they are going to be fighting the truth. Not fighting the truth, but they're going to be bringing the truth out and fighting the lies. And so this surge in cases is actually an opportunity to fight lies around this particular thing. So it's so interesting. I can put a link in there about the Pebble Mine stuff, which is also in Alaska. And this, what's interesting about this and why I bring that connection in is because the earthquake hit one day after Pebble Mine execs were exposed for having a much bigger plan than disclosed to the White House. So the White House was smart enough to turn it down. You might have remembered me reporting about this 2 months ago about how the White House declined the Pebble Mine project, surprising environmentalists. They're like, wow, we never thought they would decline that. Well, why did they decline it? Again, because they saw the elitist hands in this. So I have no doubt they knew the deeper corruption was there. I have no doubt there was, you know, Trump's incredible instincts that there was something more at play. And as a, you know, he's learned how to spot these things. And anything with plans that can be in place for centuries instead of a couple of decades, we know is going to be connected to the elitist control, because remember, they put their plans in motion decades and centuries in advance, many years in advance. They started. So they're targeting Alaska. Corruption is targeting Alaska, and that's creating an instability in their foundations, and that's what they're kind of hoping for. So we're seeing this play out through nature. The earthquake is creating this instability in things, and it's the instability is created by corrupt power. So if they are able to continue to stand up for themselves against the bullies, against the people that want to make them look bad for their choices, even if they are making the correct choices for their situation and their circumstances, and they very well could be one of the places that expose the fact that, yes, you can have a lot of cases, but it doesn't mean that it's dangerous. It doesn't mean that people are going to be dying all over the place. It means that we can implement treatments, we can implement therapies, we can implement different things. So it's very interesting that this happened one day after that exposure came out. Did you hear about it in the news? Of course you didn't hear about it in the news, because they didn't want you to know that Trump was right. They didn't want you to know how Trump's team foresaw this. They don't want you to see that. So it wasn't in the news out there. This all connects in with these codes. You see how it connects in? The codes show us this information. It shows us these layers of what's happening. And the reason the elite want to move in there is because there's a strong abundance energy. Again, there's an independent mindset. You've got a lot of Native Americans out around Alaska, and they're free thinkers. So if they could seize Alaska, even though there's a lot of little tiny towns, they can seize the collective of the Native American mindset. And that's a powerful thing for them. And is that really any different than when they brought them into the Civil War times and then they used them as trackers? They're just looking to use them. That's all they're looking to do. They don't care about the people. It's all about their money, their interest, and using people who have free will right now and suffocating that. So it's very interesting, and I do believe that it was the exposure of this corruption that pulled the tsunami energy back. Because the tsunami energy is attached to lessons, which means if they had not exposed the corruption at this time, if they had not brought that to the surface at this time, then they would have been under hard lessons. The tsunami would have came in and it would have hit and it would have created a lot of destruction for them. So also, back on October 1st, in Westmoreland, California, there were 240 earthquakes that came through, and they kind of, they call this a swarm of earthquakes that comes through. And it's a common area for earthquakes, so do people pay a lot of attention to it? Not really. You know, probably a lot of the residents there, they probably didn't even feel, a fraction of them, honestly, because most of them were between 3 and 4.5. And if you live in California and you look at that kind of earthquake scale, I mean, that pretty much stirs your coffee there. That's how used to it they are. So you pretty much got to get 5.7, 6.0, 7.0 before you get concerned about something. But when you're under the 5.0 mark, they don't even, it doesn't even faze them. It's just they sit there like it's nothing. Pretty much like, oh great, my coffee's stirred now. That's about how it goes for them. And so the unusual piece of this is the number, the fact that it is a swarm. So swarms aren't totally unusual, but not necessarily of this magnitude. So what they're concerned about is they're seeing more swarms come through in this area, more activity in this area. And, I mentioned about earthquakes. Earthquakes, plural, in the plural sense, is really about manipulation energy. It's really about trying to pull people out of their own thoughts. It's really about trying to manipulate them into a dangerous mindset and to give up choice and freedom and individuality. And at that number, it comes back to, again, those in power, those in charge, trying to manipulate the mindset that is there. An earthquake swarm is showing that the choices that are being made in California right now have a much larger impact than what we can realize. They're impacting all the existences out there. And so when you consider that, California makes up about 12% of the population in the US, that's a pretty good chunk. That means that what happens in a state like California can have an influence all the way across the U.S. And if it influences all the way across the U.S., it then becomes an impact on the world, and it starts influencing the world. So when we see a code pattern that also shows that the choices have bigger than normal impact, that means Californians are under major decision making. They're really going to have to sit with integrity. They're really going to have to take a look at things, and they're really going to have to be careful in the choices that they're making at this time, and probably very much connected with this election that's coming up that we're in. A lot of them are already doing their voting. Now, Westmoreland, again, is about responsibility. And this particular town, this particular area says that the choices that they are making there in that town have to be responsible choices. They need to stand up and do the work that needs to be done, because they will have a bigger impact than they realize. It's a small town. It's only got a couple of thousand, 2,500 people, something like that in it, but their impact is huge right now. They're governing things, they're directing things in how they make their choices there right now. California in general has a lot to do with command and the rise and fall of power, and the ability for, it has a natural ability for elite power structures to rule and to govern there, and to be in control versus command. And right now, particularly in this area and throughout California, they're asking, the codes, the energy influences are asking people to take command. And it's going to show that those who surround and have been aides or supporters of those in control are going to cause those in control to fall. So they will make poor choices that will then expose the corruption of those in control. So this is going to be an interesting area to watch. And again, the control, the command is about a removal of freedom, with it happening on that particular date. So I would connect this in codes with the current efforts to recall Governor Newsom, which started in June. And like they said, they've been seeing these swarms accelerate. So it's showing through these swarms that upheaval is being made. The upheaval in the power structure is being made, because he's done a lot of corruption there. And it's now reached this petition, this recall effort on Newsom has just recently reached 500,000 signatures on it. This is massive for California, because California has always been a liberal state. They've always been the laid back state, and people are no longer willing to be manipulated. They're seeing what's happening, and they're ready to take their freedom back. And this is what the codes are supporting. Codes are supporting them in taking their freedom back. The codes are supporting them in being responsible, in making responsible choices right now. And his thirst for power is going to be destroying him. It is destroying him, and he's gone over the edge, and that is why this recall effort is in place right now. The choices that California makes will have a huge impact for them, and again, thus the world, thus the whole U.S. It's going to cascade all the way through because of the concentration of people throughout that state alone. And even though the population has been in this kind of rapid decline in certain areas because of the regulations and the restrictions that Newsom has placed on things and with the handling of things, it hasn't stopped things. He's had these tight restrictions, and yet on September 29th, right before this swarm of earthquakes hit, we see again a huge surge in CV cases. So what is the connection between these massive earthquake activities and CV? There has to be another connection. There has to be, a trigger in there. And, looking at these things, that trigger, again, it's about freedom. It's about saying, this is it. This is a do or die time. Take your freedom. Don't let the elite in. Kick the elite out. That's really what this is coming back to. Also on the 29th, they had a military jet crash that was a huge thing during a mid-air refueling that was going on. And then on September 30th, the media decided they were going to stir up all kinds of controversy in the residents of Westmoreland that was based around white supremacy issues. And they wanted to start this whole racist thing going on in this little community. So, I mean, it's really interesting, again, that we see both of these natural disasters, both of these earthquake-struck areas, suddenly simultaneously getting CV surges. And both are about corruption in these positions of power, or trying to keep corruption out or kick corruption out, and about standing up for personal rights. And we know in 2017 there was some huge vacating in the police force in Sandpoint, Alaska as well. And basically they didn't have a police force for a while because of the turnover of things that were happening there. And it's clear that Mother Nature is giving us a sign in this. It's giving us a message. When we connect the codes of COVID with the codes of an earthquake, what we find is this is about bringing things into completion. This is about putting an ending to things. It's about ending the corruption. It's about completing cycles for these areas. So now they've got to choose. And yes, it's going to be stressful. And yes, there are probably going to be attacks made on those that are exerting their freedom. It's going to be a stressful time in these areas, but they have the ability to see it through. And remember, stress isn't always bad. You can turn it around like the grain of sand on the pearl type of thing. So moving on, I am not going to go through QPost. There are plenty of people out there that deal in these posts. They go through each one of them individually with some great insight and some great depth. And what I wanted to do with this aspect is start to consolidate this down to the key themes that we're dealing with. Because I think that's what's really important when we look at codes, is getting into the key themes that's there. So, of course, there were all kinds of stuff exposed, and you can always go check those out for yourself if you want to. But the key themes were exposure, transparency, hiding is no longer an option, corruption attacking the truth, censorship, fear of inability to protect the narrative, standing up for freedom, the importance of standing up for freedom and liberty and not allowing tyranny to rule, blackmail, national security threats, keeping division going among people, and since the corrupt cannot fight a united people. They cannot fight the truth and the awareness. Holding fear in place, trying to normalize perversions to get people to accept them, and the scandals. So they're getting to a point where they can't really cover. They can't cover for Biden anymore. They can't cover for a lot of these people anymore. And so they're in a lot of fear. And so the exposure is just coming out like crazy, which is why, again, they're trying to do all the censorship. Now, the October codes talk patterns from our past resurfacing, and that's exactly what has happened in most of the scandals and the exposure. It was past acts resurfacing, and this is happening due to a lack of closure in the past. Choices that we make now are going to greatly affect our future. There's no underestimating the importance of this election right now. Our choices right now around this election they're determining our future, literally, of what we're going to experience and how pleasant that is going to be. And careful thought has to be given to the choices we've made in the past. Those that are jealous and insecure are going to be revealed. These are all the October codes. Assassination energy is present. We know that played out, and this comes from a fear of being taken out. So the attacks are done out of fear of being removed. The elite are making their attacks out of fear of being removed. Particularly, this is likely to happen among world leaders. Many political figures have suddenly tested positive, for example, in the month of October, or, we saw that particularly in the U.S., a lot of aides, a lot of different people around Trump himself. And this is done to make a statement that the assassin is in fear and they cannot make successes that their victim has made. They realize, I can't, the elite's looking at it going, we haven't been able to make the successes that Trump has made, and we are now in fear because we're seeing what he's doing. We're seeing the successes, and we want attention, and we want recognition, because that's how the elite is. They want, remember back in those basic guidelines I talked about earlier, they want the recognition. They want to prove that they can beat their victim. They want to prove the stupidity of their victim. They, we're in the codes, it talks about being called to be a leader. It talks about battles are likely to get ugly. We're seeing that and be very deceptive, and taking sides is going to bring a downfall. So we have to be careful. Yes, in a sense, you're taking a side when you cast a vote, but what you're really casting for is not just a specific person necessarily, or just a political party affiliation. You're casting for the bigger concepts of divinity in the world, the bigger concepts of, are you going to allow the elite to rule, or are you going to allow a more natural cultural evolution to happen, or people to have choice? So you're really looking at bigger concepts than individuals. So it's important that we don't allow our individual preferences to interfere with what we need to do as compassionate souls in our world, and what we need to support from our soul self. And this is a thing that's very important to consider. And things. The codes talk a lot about a lot of mudslinging being out there, spreading of lies, ethics and integrity are on the line, a battle to prove who is best, attempts to engage in competition and to be in control of others. Those that are being taken advantage of must say no. They must bring an end to their abuse and their mistreatment, and those that try to show the truth and expose corruption are likely to receive threats. Those that are in charge are threatened by free thinkers, and the only way to win a battle is to stand strong in ethics and soul self, which is not about battling or being at war as much as it is standing in alignment, or standing in integrity, or standing for something. So you don't actually have to do battle to stand for something. Actually, I talked about that in my regular monthly video. So while these things can be unpleasant to go through, the codes show that we can make a successful outcome from this, that the lies can be overcome, that the truth, the truth can overcome them, and this is why the truth is under attack. The codes show this. If you have my book, you've read about that for the October codes. And it also shows that this is a powerful time for endings and transformations, and that we must implement things with caution. We have to be cautious in what we're implementing. Not restrictive, but cautious, aware. Cautiousness is really more of an awareness in this aspect. So let's look at how these different pieces of the codes played out. So the codes were proven by Hunter's laptops that were abandoned 3 years ago, suddenly resurface full of smoking gun information. So the scandals that our 17th level friend refers to are past choices coming forward. They're demanding to be dealt with, and how they are dealt with strongly impacts the direction of our future right now. The exposure coming forward is a result of a lack of closure on relationships. So money laundering, the pedophilia, the references to Anderson Cooper, and other such things as interagency relationships going on, which these relationships are creating a lot of exposure of the deeper layers of corruption. They're all coming forward because there wasn't a close in these relationships. Okay, when Biden stopped being vice president, Joe Biden stopped being vice president, Hunter Biden they didn't close those relationships off, so they all sat there. So now that past is coming up again, and that's what the codes are. That's one of the ways that the things manifest when we see this information in the codes. The past is resurfacing because it has to be dealt with so that we can move forward and be aware of what's happening so that we can make wise choices as we move forward. The assassination energy, I think, is directly connecting to the CV outbreak among Trump, Melania, Barron, and many of the aides, as well as some of the governors and others across the country in these positions. And our 17th letter friend alludes to this being a direct attack on Trump and that he was not expected to recover. So it was an intentional attack that makes it an assassination, which the code said, look, there's assassination energy present right now. There are going to be attacks made. They didn't expect him to recover from this. And it shows that this attack also, because of where the code energy was at, what I just read to you, attacks are made out of fear of corruption being removed and dismantled. So if Trump was part of the corruption, he wouldn't be under this attack. He wouldn't be in this position. This is another affirmation that he's not the bad guy that he's been portrayed to be. I don't claim that he's some, 100% angel. None of us who are living in a human existence can claim that. But it does show that in this situation, at this time, at this point of things, he is the one that is aligning with true energy. He is the one that's aligning with divine presence. And these attacks are coming because he is dismantling the elite. It's an affirmation, is the way I see it in this. So once again, he comes up on the side of innocence, the victim of vicious attacks, which is part of why we know he's not part of this elitist structure and he's not part of the corruption, but he's one that's working to bring it down. And it was through that, or through this situation, that Pelosi was trying to bring recognition back to her own self. Look, I'm going to be in charge. Look, I'm going to be in charge. Oh, the news was promoting it. Oh, Pelosi's preparing to be in charge. They're preparing Pelosi now, right? Remember, this is the way the elitist structures work. This is their strategies. They have to make kills to claim their power and influence in their circle among the elite and show their compliance. So Pelosi has to, I think when all unfolds, we're going to find that she is somehow connected or behind part of this assassination attempt that is in there. I don't have all the details on it, but the information is there in the codes. And she's the player that's connecting in this. She's the player that came forth seeking the recognition. So when we look at it from the code perspective, we see that she's the one that's a player behind this. So the codes talk about a call to leadership. What did we see happen in this month? And just actually last night, we saw Amy Coney Barrett confirmed as a Supreme Court Justice. Our 17th letter friend calls Anons to lead the way this month. He calls them to take the leadership, right in alignment with the codes. Okay? One thing I've learned about the codes is they are truthful, they are honest, they're integrity, they are in divine alignment, and they are God source energy. And so I only have to look at what is aligning with them and what is not aligning with them. What is in flow with them, what is not in flow with them. Regardless of the players, because my human eyes can deceive me. So I look at what's happening and then I do my research from there and say, why is this person that I thought was okay not okay? Why is this person that I thought isn't okay is okay? I take it from that different perspective to understand things, to see these pieces connecting, and to see where the players are at in the game. We need real leaders to uphold the truth and guide the way through the lies and distortions right now. So you could do that even without taking sides. You can encourage people to stand in the truth, not be swayed by what they think, not be swayed by these sides, but to just stand in the truth of the soul, in essence. So facts are to be used, and this is not about taking sides, but standing in integrity so that the truth can be upheld and remain in existence. So we have to stick to the facts, not the facts that the media wants us to see, not the Fauci facts. We need to get to the real facts where there aren't the organizations being bought off and paid off. Okay? Mudslinging and lies heavily used. Boy, have we seen that this month. Ethics and integrity are on the line. So how we deal with this, you might have noticed during the debates, during the 60-minute interview on Trump, they just mudslinged at him. They just attacked viciously at him. And he just sat there calm. He sat there. He didn't lose it on anybody. And when he was done taking it, and he's taking it so that people can see it. He's taking it so people can be aware of what's going on here. And so, because he knows what's on the line, he wants people to look at it. Look, they're operating out of integrity. He wants you to see it for yourself. He doesn't need to tell it to you. He wants you to see it so you can see what's really happening. And their lack of integrity, these people who went on the attack, the debaters, the moderators with him, backfired. And people saw, look at how out of line those moderators were. Look how out of line the 60 Minutes reporter was. And it became about integrity. It was no longer about the issues. It was about integrity. And who has been doing the mudslinging, okay, wasn't Trump. Trump was on the defense. The corrupt elitist and those that work for them. And who's been on the defense? Trump has been on the defense. There's no doubt that the battles have been ugly this past month. The mudslinging has been ugly. The codes showed this was happening. Taking sides leads to a downfall. So we've seen this where big tech took a side through censorship and they activated it. And this is leading to their downfall because now they're being sued with multiple cases. They've got the government bringing stuff against them. They've supported the spreading of lies, and now they're having to face the repercussions of that. So they said, we're going to take political affiliation. We're going to align with the elite structures. We are going to remove Trump supporters. We are going to remove Anons. We are going to remove people who promote holistic treatments. Whether it's about the virus or not, we're going to remove these people. And they took a side. They flat out took a side in that. And they took action on that side in a way that was destructive. And that was their downfall. And we're going to continue to see that downfall. There's going to be more of that coming out after the election. Truth is about bringing an end to abuse. And it is through truth that the atrocious acts connected to things such as pedophilia, money laundering, dictatorships, and other crimes against humanity are going to end. Okay? So if we are aligning with the truth, again, just align with the truth, the actual truth of things. Not what people want you to believe, but the actual truth of things, the soul's truth of things. We can bring an end to the abuse right now. And I believe we're going to be seeing that happen. We're going to be seeing that in motion. Those disclosing the truth will be under attack. And Q showed this with the majority of the major censorship that is going on, brought that to light, exposed this through major deletion of accounts. The codes show us that it is those that are under the attack that are telling the truth. So again, who's under the attack? It's not the media. It's not really the media. They're the ones doing the attacking. Okay? And so Trump, Anons, our 17th letter friend, they represent the free thinkers, and that makes them a threat to those that are supporting the elitist principles. The codes remind us that lies cannot overcome the truth. So truth is always going to prevail, and it's only through choice. So its only choice, I should say, is to try to alleviate the truth. It's to try to censor it, to hide it, to restrict it, to ban it. This is not pleasant to be under attack. People are not taking this because they have something to gain from being under attack. They're doing this because they're standing for a bigger principle. They're doing this because there's something bigger at stake. And our 17th letter friend talks about this in warning Anons to present the facts and use a sort of camouflage. don't list yourself as an anon, just present the facts. Don't make attachments to sides or to groups. So interestingly enough, even that 17th letter friend is saying, this is not about sides. Stick with the facts, stick with the integrity, stick with what's in line here, what's really at stake. And the codes talk about this being a powerful time of transformation. I'm sorry, my nose is just itching like crazy. And there's no doubt with the layers of corruption that are surfacing from the past actions that endings are going to surface out of the truth surfacing. So we're going to see the endings that we're seeing as this month close out is bringing an ending to the tyranny, bringing an ending through exposure to the tyranny. Transformation is going to happen, and we have to learn from our past. We have to learn from what has been set in motion and how this played out and hit such a massive scale so that we can make wiser choices going forward. Our 17th letter friend talks about uniting, and the codes also tell us to stand together in truth. So both acknowledge that this is a force that corruption cannot exist against. It says that it cannot fight a people that are united, and that they are powerless against a people united, and that are led by divine presence and faith, which is why they try to alleviate the God energy in the world. It's powerless. It tells you it is powerless against the God energy. It is powerless against us united in God energy, in divine presence, in truth. So transformation's a natural result where we stand united and our future is decided based on being united in the truth or united in lies. And that's the decision we're making right now. Are we going to move forward under lies and deception, or are we going to move forward in the truth? Are we going to move forward in the elitist, which have already told us they're about lies, or are we going to move forward in the Christ energy, in the divine presence, which we know is about truth? We all have to make that decision individually. So on a world news level, and we're almost through here, leaders, I had people contacting me saying, what are these mixed messages about? I thought we had a pretty good leader, but now I'm seeing these things and it seems like they're supporting the elite, but then I see these little pieces that come up and it seems like they're having some sort of conscience, and it's almost like this battle of their soul going on. And, in many ways it is right now. These mixed messages that they're getting from people, they're struggling to tell where they stand, so they're struggling to know what to do in regards to voting in their parts of the world and in the elections that are coming up for them. And this is a very reasonable concern, because as people who thought their leaders were working for them, they now are seeing maybe they're feeding the elitist structures. Maybe they aren't working for us. Maybe they aren't for the people. And their policies seem to be more aligned with dictatorships than being for the people. So I see this concern. I see people expressing their concerns about what might happen in their different countries and what's going on there, and kind of coming to me and trying to get some feedback on that. So when it comes to world leaders, we have those that are part of the elitist, we have those that are at the mercy of the elitist, and we have those that are standing up to the elitist. And it's been very hard for people to stand up to the elitists prior to Trump coming into office, because they've faced threats to themselves, to their families. They've been blackmailed, and this is a big part of this elitist and the communist structures is the blackmail. And this is what we're seeing come out through, for example, Hunter Biden's stuff. The blackmail that has been held on him that they could do. And did he have a turn of heart? I can't say that for sure. I don't know that I believe that. That could just be another ploy and things. But if he started to have a turn of heart, then they could have released blackmail stuff on him. There's, it's quite a tangled web to sort through in there. So it's been very hard for people to stand up to the elitists due to facing threats themselves. Again, to themselves, their families, their country, and it's, you know, they don't feel like they have the power that they need to be self-reliant, to step out of these systems. And that's where some of our world leaders are. They feel powerless to the system, to the elite structures. So one thing that we have to keep in mind here with all of this is that there are many that want to do the right thing. I sincerely believe that there's actually a lot of the world leaders, and we see that because they're all these peace treaties are coming together that Trump's been orchestrating. You know, they want to do the right thing. They want to stand up to the elitists, and yet they're appearing to be with them. So they might appear to be with them, but they may or may not actually be there. They may just be kind of at the mercy of the system, so to say, or they may be trying to walk a tightrope, trying to keep themselves safe until after the U.S. elections, because well, many are either in a clandestine way or behind the scenes way supporting Trump, or want to support him. Many are, I would say, waiting until after the elections happen before they can show that alliance more openly. And, you know, sadly, there are many leaders that are supporting the corruption, and they're doing it out of fear, not because they necessarily want to, but because they're out of fear, and because the energies and the code currents are forcing us to make choices our soul is trying to fight for us. So I think that's where sometimes we get these mixed messages, and we see these little pieces come out that it's like, oh my God, it's like the soul is, you know, crying out, trying to get through all of this garbage and mess and everything. So they're showing in the conflict really of the soul's desire to do the right thing and to be free of the control, and to you know, the human, and that conflict is conflicting with the human self trying to be in a self-preservation mode, because that's what the human self does, is it goes into self-preservation when it's in danger or when it senses danger, and it does that to minimize the abuse and the danger that it's going to have to face if the elitists are allowed to carry out their plans. So sadly, they can't see the danger of taking the side of the corruption or walking that line, or, you know, being on that tightrope. They don't see the danger of not coming out and standing in the soul self, which is actually a much bigger danger. And it's natural for people to feel that they can't trust people in positions of control when they sit on the fence like that, and they don't have the courage to stand up for the people and doing what is right. That breaks the trust and the faith in the people that they're commanding over. So the key pieces here are fear and insecurity. Fear, as we know, is a death pattern. It's going to you either transform or you die. You know, if it doesn't make you stronger, it kills you, type of thing. And the insecurity is based around our wavering faith. It's showing where our faith is done. And when we have fear and insecurity that come together, it is either going to expose lies and deceptions, or it's going to suck people into them, either way. So in codes, it's kind of about being trapped in this web of lies and deceit and manipulation, and the people that are walking that fence have to find the faith to make the transformation. And this is as ancient as anything in all of time on this earth or existence, is you have to have faith in something that isn't tangible. You have to have faith in God to make the big transformations and not be killed, because in reality, the elitists, they're probably going to get rid of you anyways if you're on the fence. So you might as well take a stand for something worthwhile. It's this literal struggle of faith in the midst of life and death situations is what we're seeing from the codes under this type of thing that's happening. So, you know, when we start looking at what's coming in, which is our last piece to cover today, it is said that if Trump wins, that we will be experiencing global resistance, which is a sort of backlash or attack from the elitists that don't want to give up their power. Okay, I mean, that's how that corruption, that structure works. They're never going to want to give up their power. They're never going to do it freely, willingly, and openly. And so they're going to fight. They're going to fight all the way to the end about things until everything is removed where they have nothing, no ability to fight anymore. And so in codes, global resistance is about those who are jealous of the successes of others and want to battle for command. It is someone who has achieved rapid and enormous successes, and those that are jealous will try to take that person out. They will try to assassinate. So I have no doubt that there can easily be more assassination attempts. That is in the codes of November. It does show more assassination things. There are some things in Trump's personal codes that indicate potential assassination attempts coming on election day in particular. So he is going to have to be careful. If there are ways for him to avoid that, certainly he could be separate from from Pence that night. They could be in two separate places. That would be a possibility. That would remove some of the assassination for him and Pence directly. And I do believe that there are going to be some kind of attempt to try to take both of them out. We'll have to see whether that is just really nasty mudslinging or whether that is a physical, true, full-on assassination attempt in there. No doubt he's probably prepared for that, and he's probably ahead of the game. The codes talk about things becoming personal and that we need to be heart-centered, and this is coming up for November, focusing on self-care, talks of things having a deeper meaning and an inability to hide. This means the corruption can't hide anymore. It's about accepting the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, and finding value in everything, finding value in all of it. And this is the spiritual soul's way. This is the soul's way of doing things. It sees the beauty in all of it. So this shows that the attacks that are going to be made will be by those who are unable to see the value in his successes and who have been exposed by the poor choices of those around them. It is Trump's successes that will lead them to be on the attack, and successes that could not be made without being in some sort of divine alignment. No, I'm not praising Trump as the Christ reincarnated, but what I'm saying is that somewhere he is walking in this divine alignment, because he can't make the successes that he's made without having some kind of strong connection there. And it's likely that we're going to see more assassination attempts on his health in particular, and that the attacks that are made on him will be very personal. They're going to hit him on a personal level. They're trying to shake up his faith. They're trying to shake up that connection he has with God. And they will be on the things that he holds the dearest to his heart. And again, his very faith. They're going to try to shake that up. So they could create all kinds of illusions. There's all kinds of directions I could see that playing out. In his personal codes, luck is on his side. And this luck under these influences can only come through being heart-centered. You don't get the luck because if you're not heart-centered, you get bad luck is what you get instead of good luck. So he would be destroyed. If he wasn't walking in some sort of a heart-centered space, he would be destroyed. That's inevitable. That means that the tactics that get used against him are likely to backfire, and since those making the attacks are likely to not be in a heart-centered space, which means they're going to have bad luck in their attempts that they take on him, and therefore they're going to likely find themselves in huge spaces of deprivation, huge trouble, huge issues, and huge self-exposure going on. So in the last debate, one other thing I want to cover here, and this is really quick, Biden mentioned a reference to Dark Winter. And many believe he was referring to Operation Dark Winter, which is biowarfare, and that connects to a smallpox outbreak, which is deliberately released. Now, in codes, Dark Winter is about completion. It is about guiding people and encouraging them to bring out their assets, their strengths, helping people find their confidence, working together as a team in aspects, but it is also this aspect of command trying to block completion. It is about command that is trying to destroy positive leadership, trying to destroy those key people who are uniting people together. And so when he says this, when I look at it from a code perspective, and he says it's going to be a dark winter, it's going to be a very dark winter, right there is the elite doing what they are doing to play by their guidelines. We are telling you we are going to make an attack on you for bringing people together and making them strong, and we are going to keep you from completing what you have started. This is an outright threat. It's an outright threat. And we know from the physical, practical aspects, that's probably going to be done in some way through a potential smallpox outbreak or some sort of virus type outbreak. So Trump says that is not going to happen, which tells me that he already is ahead of it. I'm pretty certain we are still in really for some bumpy rides. 2021, the Code Journey book, you're not going to want to miss getting that. And again, that's going to be out within the next couple of days here. Watch for my postings on that. It's full of psyops, full of attempts towards tyrant controls and more elitist tactics. So I figured that the attempts will be made, but Trump is a step ahead of the game. He's got good luck. He's going to come through them. They're not going to be banking on that. The dark winter is no doubt a continuation of the battle of good versus evil that's going on, and it's something that shares with us the importance of taking good care of our health, operating with foresight, learning what they were able to put through, and not falling for the tactics that were used before by the media over 2020, and to be more proactive in our health, be more proactive in holistic approaches, be more proactive in learning our lessons, and realizing that the heavily masked areas were some of the most heavily infected areas as well. So, there's so many pieces to look at in things, and it's something that shares with us the importance that, especially if we live in areas where it's hard to get into sunlight or have access to fresh air, which can be the case like where I live, heavy snow areas, heavy winters with a lot of cloud cover. We need to look at what we can do to supplement that through our diet, through our nutrition, through other areas. We need to take extra time for the meditations. We need to take extra time for our soul connection time. We need to do more to be in our soul-centered self. So I think these are really, really big pieces we have to consider. It's something to keep in mind, and that's what's coming in. You got the foresight, work with it, take it, run with it, do something positive with it, and stand in there. Stand strong in the truth, the light, the love, the integrity, and the whole works of it, and we will continue to see this corruption brought down. Thank you everybody for hanging in there with me. I know these videos are long. Again, I only put them out once a month, so I'm not throwing one of these at you every single week or every couple of days. I do appreciate the support. I do appreciate your interest in learning about the code connections that are happening in our world and getting to some of the deeper layers and the deeper understandings, and your willingness to get to the truth of things with that. So thank you so much. Take care, everybody, and I will see you next month.